Hey guys, hey Chuck here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of East to West. I can't believe it's the beginning of season 9. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where God takes the show, what we learn together this year, and hopefully, I can make it a, a consistent show. Hopefully, I can make it every week. I'm excited. Spent the last few months dealing with some cancer issues, and dealing with some kidney issues, and now I'm dealing with a little bit of throat issues, but, that all comes with the territory, and hopefully, I'm past all that, and excited to be here again. Thank you, Jason, for letting me come in and do my shows again. I'm excited. Hope you guys are having a good week out there. Hey, there we go. All right. Can't have a messed up collar. Come on now. Look, it's all even. It's got to be even. My wife will be laughing right now as she's watching the show because she knows. But anyway, I'm excited to be back. Oh, it was a great weekend. Labor Day weekend, the end of summer. Stinks. I hate it. I like fall, but man, today was chilly. Yeah, I got to go to the Old State Capitol in Springfield. If you've not had a chance to get out there and check that out, you got to check it out. History for me has always been a thing for me. I like to see where we've come from, see how that changes where we're going, in the moment. We went out to New Old Salem where Lincoln spent 6 years out there. It was really neat and fascinating just to be out there in the wilderness and just come upon this little tiny village tucked inside the wilderness. Obviously, it's much different than it was back then. They have parking lots and this, visitor center. But just to be able to stand there and think, people actually lived in this wilderness, in this village, which was really kind of cool. And how really back then they really had to really depend on each other. I mean, they couldn't really isolate themselves from each other. They had to be able to trade with each other for goods and services. They had to rely on each other for protection of the village. They had to rely on each other to help raise the children, And they did all that because I think they loved being with each other. There was a close-knit community feeling with them. And today we're going to just keep hammering that theme of love because I just think there's no shortage of opportunities to talk about it. It's an emotion. It's a feeling that is being drained, I think, from society, from the world. It's just very sad for me to see when I see somebody else who's being treated, not in a loving way, because it just means that you're just saying to that other person that you're not worthy, you're not worth it. And too many times especially the young ones, the young kids, I've just seen so many times where they've not been shown love and the reaction that they've given back to that, and just knowing that, man, something has just been spoken into them that is going to fester and just, hopefully not, but maybe will just, will influence the decision they make later in life, because of that hurt they've experienced so many years ago. We think that, words just kind of come and go, but words actually stay with us forever. I know that personally. I've struggled with stuff that was said to me when I was 8 years old. 8. And they still come back to haunt me. They still influence my decisions in life today, almost 40 years later. And how, words of love have influenced me and words of hurt have influenced me. And it's just amazing to see how that shapes us, And today, I'd like to talk about, first and foremost, how we should make love a priority in our lives. Love should be number one in our life. Love of of people, love of things. You know, going through this whole cancer journey, I've learned to try to love every moment that I'm given. You know, I don't know if I'm ever going to be in the doctor's office again and hear the words, you know, that my cancer's back or not. I've had, you know, a couple checkups and the cancer's good. I mean, other than a few issues with my kidneys and my throat, everything else is doing great. So it's just really taught me to make loving the moment and all the things that are in that moment, people, experiences, situations. You know, try to love that moment because we're not guaranteed another moment. Well, you know, we could, you know, drop dead in a heartbeat. You know, and so we've got to really just try to focus on loving the moment. You know, because you know God's clearly calls us in 1 John 3:11 to love each other, as we should love ourselves. You know, we should love one another. And it just doesn't mean periodically. It doesn't mean when we feel like it. It doesn't mean when it makes us look good or makes us feel good. We should love people no matter what. And I've been struggling with that. I'll be honest with you. This guy here has been struggling with that a lot though for the last couple of weeks, just because of all the stuff that I've been going through. I've been letting that fear of death and that fear of sickness, you know, separate me from people. I push people away and just, you know, sometimes I feel like it's just easier for me to be alone and not have to, you know, interact, you know, and try to love people and try to be with people. And that's not what God calls us to do. God calls us to not worry about that. He's got that under control. He wants us to keep moving forward and keep walking in love, because when we love people, that opens doors for people. That opens doors to that plants a seed that may influence them later in life. They may have a moment where they're at a crossroad in life and will remember that moment when somebody actually cared about them and actually loved them, and will help alter the course that they may have taken had they not received that. Because I think too many times I see a lot of kids, and I've seen a lot of kids who have been hurt and wounded growing up, become young adults who make decisions based on not present day facts or present day circumstances, but the circumstances of the past have dictated what they've done in the present. And it's just hard. That's why we've got to make loving people a priority, because we just never know. The words we plant today may influence a decision tomorrow. And we've just got to do that. We've just got to keep pressing on. You know, and then we've got to understand the importance of love. You know, when Jesus spoke to the disciples regarding the first and second greatest commandments, he explained that all the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. You know, that we must love each other, and that we must love ourselves, and that we must love God above all. You know, to the people of Israel, you know, and as for many believers today, it would seem more logical for obedience to be the peg from which the law hangs, since the point of writing a law is adherence to it. And it is written, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Yet Jesus also said, I give you a new commandment. Love one another. Just as I have loved you, you must also love one another. The Apostle Paul goes on to tell us, love does not wrong a neighbor. Love, therefore, is the fulfillment of the law. If we truly operate under the law, we're operating under love as well, because love is the fulfillment of the law. Because love will keep us on the straight and narrow. Love will keep us with open hands towards each other and not fists. Love will keep the doors open of communication. Love will, you know, just just be just a journey that is just such more pleasant than being on a journey of anger and bitterness. You know, when I was going through my treatments and I was in the cancer center, I'd like to share a little here about my own personal experience of how this really affected me. I was angry. I was angry for a while. I was bitter. I was hurt. I was upset. I was questioning why, did this happen to me? Life was going great before that, and at this point I didn't think life was going very well. Although it was, I just couldn't see it because of all the hurts and the hurdles that were being put up before me. And I just remember a friend of mine, wives, she had no obligation to do this, but she would just come up and just sit with us for the entire time because she loved my wife so much that she just wanted her to know that she wasn't alone in this process. I think this process was actually harder on my wife than it was on me because, she was, just sad to see how sick I was getting from the treatments and just how sad, that because I was just miserable all the time and scared and confused and she just didn't, obviously she didn't have all the answers and she wanted to have all the answers for me, but sometimes we just don't have answers for what people are going through. And that doesn't mean we can't sit with them, and that means we can't love them and help them through their struggle. And I really learned a lot from her. I learned a lot that sometimes it just takes sitting with someone and bringing them a bean burrito. She'll know what that means. And sometimes it's just sitting with people and loving people. And that's the importance of love. It's a foundation built on, it's a concrete foundation in people's lives. It's not a sinking sand foundation. It's a foundation where people can say, you know what, I care about you. I look at you and I see you, and I see you for who you are, not for what you're going through or for what you've gone through or what's happened to you. I see you for who you are in this moment. And that's why it's important to love people, because we get to see people in a whole new light when that happens. And we get to understand and realize that they're people too. Everybody's got hang-ups in their life. Everybody's gone through something in life. If you think that you're the only one that's ever gone through anything that you've experienced in life, I'm sorry to tell you, but there's tons of people out there, this guy, that's gone through stuff. And we've got to be able to turn that around and say, instead of I'm going to use that to isolate myself from other people, we should be saying, I'm going to use that to walk along somebody else. We've got to be able to embody the distinguishing nature of love. When we demonstrate Christian love, or any love, it distinguishes us from the rest of the world. Jesus goes on to say, by this love, all people that will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Notice Jesus did not say that people will know that you are my disciples if you promote my agenda, or wear Christian t-shirts, or a WWJD bracelet, or have a fish decal on your car, but rather if you love one another. Love can't be superficial. Love can't be momentary. Love it can't be situational. Love has to be unconditional, no matter what. No matter what you're going through, no matter what somebody else is going through, that person that's standing in front of you, screaming at you, telling you you're not worthy, you're worthless, you're no good. You gotta just love them, because it makes you feel better. I just think it makes you feel better when you can love on people who don't love you back. You know, and that's a good point too. We can't love people expecting it to return all the time, because sometimes it's not gonna. Sometimes you can love on somebody and you can walk with them and you can talk with them and you can try to do things for them, and sometimes it's not returned. You know, there's a story in the Bible where Jesus heals 10 lepers and only one came back to thank him. He knew 9 weren't going to come back, but he didn't heal just one, he healed all 10 of them because he loved all 10 of them, even though he knew 9 weren't going to come back and thank him for it. So that's the kind of attitude we should develop. We know we're going to love thousands of people in our life. It's a fact. You know, we may love 800 people in our lives total, you know, through friendships, relationships, children, you know, marriage, you know, family, whatever, you know. And 50% of those may not ever return that, or may never ever come back, you know, in our lives. But that doesn't mean we don't still love them. You know, we can't pick and choose who we love, because then that means that, you know, we live in a house where we only open certain doors, and all the doors should be open. The front door should be wide open. You know, it's there's a story that I'd like to share real quick before we continue on. It's kind of a cool story. I heard it a few years ago from an old pastor of mine, and it's just such an amazing story. This poor man saved all of his money, worked for a very long time, saved all of his money because he wanted to buy a ticket on a ship to America, because he had heard how America was the land of opportunity, land of freedom, you know, and the land of dreams. So he saved all of his money and he bought a third-class ticket. So the day that it was time for the ship to come, for the ship to sail, he packed up all of his belongings, which basically consisted of a shirt and a pair of pants, handed his ticket, and boarded the ship. Now, the only provisions he was able to scrape up and bring with him was a few packages of crackers and a brick of cheese. So he had it all figured out by day and by meal, how many crackers and how big of a piece of cheese he could have to survive the journey. Because back in those days, the journeys would take, to travel from England to America, probably would take a couple weeks. And so he had it figured out. And so the journey began, and every day he would stroll the decks, you know, checking out the sea and the sky and all the people just hanging out. And then he would walk by the dining hall, and he would stop and he would pause, and he would look in and see all the people enjoying the dinners, their meals, and he would go back to his room, to his cabin, and he would enjoy a few crackers and a piece of cheese. Well, this went on the entire voyage, you know, spent most of his days walking and just being by himself. And the day came where he arrived at America, and the ship pulled up to the port, and the captain was at the gangway and was saying goodbye to everybody. And as the poor man walked up, he stopped him and he asked him a question. He said, you know, I've noticed you, you know, you walk the decks a lot, and I hope you enjoyed the ship, and what'd you think of it? And the passenger said, man, this was an incredible journey, you know, the ship was beautiful, and the cabins were great, and it was just wonderful, and I loved it. And then the captain asked him, he said, I'd like to ask another question. He says, I noticed that you never came to dinner. And the poor man says, well, unfortunately, the only money I could save was enough to buy a third-class ticket. And at this point, the captain, with tears in his eyes, because he had just realized um, had told the man, he said, the meal was included in the ticket, and that there was always a place set for you at the table, and so it's just very profound for me that no matter what somebody has said to you out there, especially the young kids out there that may be watching this, no matter what anybody said to you or is saying to you now, at God's table, there's always a place set for you. Doesn't matter. Because the price of your meal has been paid with his sacrifice. And so just always remember that there is one that loves you no matter what. It's an unconditional love. And I've had to learn that over again. I've had to relearn that in a more intimate way through the struggles that I've gone through over the last year. You know, October 14th will be a day that will live, you know, in infamy per se for the rest of my life. That's the day that my life changed forever. And that's the day that the journey, struggle, questions, doubts, fears began, you know, because it was like, you know, before then every test would come back negative, you know, and then be like, well, let's do another test, and that would come back negative. And so I started to build up this hope that everything was going to be fine until you hear those words. And then it just seems like the walls just come crashing down. And then you start thinking, you know, what's going to happen next, you know? And you start to feel the isolation of hate and anger and confusion but you just gotta hold on to love in those moments, and for me that was very powerful. Even when I struggled with it, I still left myself open to try to learn from this experience and how I can use it to walk with other people and just love on them, because there's a lot of people going out there that are still struggling and still questioning and still wondering and still, you know, need someone to walk beside them. You know, when we demonstrate the virtue of love, first of all, love values the other person. You know, love in its true form, you know, it helps value the other person. It acts as a way to show that we are actively interested in the other person and the well-being of another person. Love acts for the benefits of others. You know, love is the spirit and the heart that will never seek anything but the highest good of its fellow men. You know, God loved us not because we had something to offer him, but rather he had something to offer us. You know, for God loved the world in this way, that he gave his one and only Son, so that whoever believes in him should have eternal life. You know, somebody should never ever say to us, how much do I owe you for your love, for your act of kindness? Nobody should ever have to ask us that. Because, you know, when that happens, I don't think it's done right. You know, when I try to help somebody else out and they try to repay me, I'm like, don't repay me. You know, pass it on to somebody else. Because that's not what doing love in community is. It's to expand our group of one or two. It's to bring people in and say, hey, the world may hate you, the world may discard you, but we love you no matter what. We want to hang out with you. I want to hang out with as many people as I can, because I like to learn. I like to learn from other people. I like to learn different cultures. I like to learn different languages. I like to learn, you know, how people meet and break bread together. I just love all that stuff, and And if I didn't open myself up to loving them and doing that, I would miss so much. And I think we miss so much along the journey of our lives by separating people because we don't start off each relationship or each moment with an opportunity to love being with that person in that moment. I don't think we do that. And I think love opens a door, lays a foundation for us to grow together and to experience life together. Love means that we're vulnerable to the other. Love opens up its life to another person. It goes beyond sentimental feelings. It breaks down barriers. It exposes our heart. Think about Jesus. He left the glory of heaven to come to the earth. He veiled his divinity and took on humanity. What did it get him? He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. Can you imagine being away on business trip for a week and coming home and your family not recognizing you? That's similar to what Jesus experienced when he came to earth. Surely that must have hurt. Then Jesus hung on the cross, dying for the people that he loved. They hurled abuses at him. His heart was broken, and yet he forgave them. To love is to be vulnerable. Love entails a cost. It gets its hands dirty. It takes a chance. It goes out on a limb. It takes a gamble. Love makes a statement and leaves a legacy. It does the unexpected, surprising and stirring. It performs acts that steal the heart and leaves an impression on the soul. Often these acts are never forgotten. You may be like, man, I did all that and I got nothing back. Well, if you're doing it for that reason, you might want to check your motives because, like I said before, love should never expect anything in return. Love should just be put out there and let it go and let it do its thing, It's just one of those things that I just truly believe we've got to work on. In conclusion, an end goal of Christian life is love. The measure of maturity is our love for God and our love for others. If we fail in our love, we have missed what it means to be, a Christian. But there is hope for the one who has failed in love. We've all struggled with love, but in those moments where we fail, we do have the one hope that there is a God out there who has unconditional love for us, that can forgive us and show us how to love others and to keep going. Love isn't a one-time deal. You don't get one shot at it, and then if you fail, that's it. You're done. You're not kicked out of class. You're not kicked out of God's kingdom. You're not kicked out of the dining room. You're not kicked out of anything. It's a process, and it's a process that takes time, and it's everything we do has to begin with a foundation of love. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll pick it up again next week. Again, thank you for joining me here on East to West. I'm excited to be back. Have a great week. It's supposed to be a little chilly this week. Try to stay warm. And again, we love you here at East to West. Have a great week, guys.